The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. That is a label that I want to be reminded of every single day is I live unreasonably. And as soon as I start to try to live inside the lines that someone else has set for me, everything goes wrong.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unstoppable Woman podcast. I'm Amira Alvarez. I'm the founder and CEO of the Unstoppable Woman, and I am super excited to have on the podcast today an amazing woman who I am so honored to call a colleague and a friend, and I'm pleased as punch that she is on the podcast with us today to share her brilliance. So today we have Megan Kuethen, who is the co-founder and principal strategist at BusyCure, an operations consultancy serving online businesses with more than 2,000 hires and 5,000 interviews to her name. She is best known for being a team expert, helping founders become great leaders and businesses develop strong and healthy culture. As a serial entrepreneur, Megan is building her 5th and 6th businesses right now. And check this out, you guys, while maintaining a 24-hour work week. So I'm going to dive into that because that is freaking amazing. And in her free time, she reads over 100 books a year, goes on adventures with her dogs, and travels the world, bakes delicious sweets, lives in Nashville, is an active member of the entrepreneurial community there, and her church. So I am super, super excited to bring her on and have her share her brilliance with us. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much, Amira. It is awesome to be here.
So the first thing that I want to chat with you about is tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. You've had 5 to 6 businesses. You're on the 5th, you're on the 6th. That means you're growing 2 at the same time right now. I can do math like that. And I want to know where you came from and what got you here and the pathway to your success, really.
Well, it has been a very windy road, that's for sure. I started my first business at the age of 20, but I really think I was entrepreneurial from the start. I am the 4th generation of entrepreneur in my family. I've got entrepreneurs on both sides. So this is just how my family is. My brother is also an entrepreneur. And I was just talking with my mom the other day about how when we were kids, they used to pay us like a quarter to collate pages for a catalog or things like that. So
you had an incentive plan.
Yes. So it was in my blood. I don't think I could avoid it. I didn't think I was going to. I in fact thought I was going to take over my dad's business at some point. Hilariously, it seems that my brother is on that path.
Why is that hilarious?
I don't think that was his plan. I don't think he's super interested in the specific type of business. In fact, I don't think he likes it at all. Don't tell him I said that. I think it might be a secret. So my dad runs a recruitment firm, and I love people operations. I love everything to do with people and leadership. And although I call myself an ops person, it's really the people side of operations that I love. My brother is also an ops person, but he likes all the non-people stuff. So I think it's kind of funny that he's potentially taking over and maybe running a business that isn't super aligned with him. But again,
so let's dive in there for a moment. So okay. I have the exceptional experience to know you from your work. Having hired you, you were instrumental in helping us find our fabulous director of ops, who is slaying things, not without ups and downs, right? We talk a lot about that. But I also know that, we've talked a lot behind the scenes about business and growth and what it takes. And you're a people person, but you're also a process person. Like, yeah, you bring the full package. So why do you think you say that why do you put yourself in that box, if you will?
It's not so much a box as a specialty. So I love everything to do with operations. I think I was eight 12-ish years old, and I asked my dad, what's the job for people who always see what's wrong? And I didn't know it at the time, but like, that is just how my brain is geared, is like, there's a puzzle in everything. There's a problem in everything. There's always a way to improve. I think that the reason that I am more drawn to people is that I wasn't good at people. I joke with people, I was born a robot and I became a human as I discovered Myers-Briggs and learned to speak other people's coding languages, is what I called it. And I have loved really the transformation that I experienced, going from so shy that I couldn't even walk up to a counter to ask for my takeout, to now being a leader in teaching people how to work with other humans and how to like be human with the people on their team.
That's a bit of your past that I don't know, because I don't know you as that woman. I know you as this woman. So can you tell us about that journey? And then also, if you can speak a little bit to the fact that you as a woman have claimed the business that you truly desire versus that little side note that you had around your brother, who has stepped into a business that may not be perfectly aligned for him. And do you think that that is a quality that you and I have uniquely, and not anything to do with being women, like unacceptable to not live our genius, not be in our purpose, not be doing what lights us up? Or is that a quality that you think women are less available for compromise around?
As much as we live in a man's world, there's an expectation of everyone that everyone will fall in line. And because it is kind of a man's world, the expectation is around duty, that falling in line looks like doing your duty. And I don't know what your experience has been like, but my experience as a woman was to kind of do what was responsible. And I was very young when I discovered this quote. It's by George Bernard Shaw. And he says, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." And my parents hate this, but I literally have the tattoo "unreasonable" on my arm.
Just to remind you.
Yeah, because I want that label. I don't own a lot of labels for myself, but that is a label that I want to be reminded of every single day, is that I live unreasonably. And as soon as I start to try to live inside the lines that someone else has set for me, everything goes wrong. And I'm not able to live in my genius. I'm not able to be everything I'm supposed to be.
Have you ever found that you have been the one who has set the container that is actually unreasonable for you, like is trying to constrain you? Most often, it's not someone else. It's us.
It's perceived.
Yeah. So how have you dealt with that? Like, what has been the journey around recognizing when you're creating that level of constraint, that trying to make yourself into the reasonable instead of following the unreasonable but genius path, right?
It's not a well-defined journey. And we originally met through my last business, Queen of Ops. And that I started as an operations consultancy, but I got called on because of my history with recruiting. I got called on to start filling open roles because I knew all of these people who were hiring and they needed help. And before I knew it, I had built an entire business, and not just any business. I had built in a year a 7-figure business that was all constraints that I didn't want. It was, the whole thing was, I don't want to say completely misaligned, but I got the major pieces wrong. And so like really the journey is still kind of new.
Wait, pause there. When you say the major pieces, because I think this is a really critical concept to dive into. What were the critical pieces?
For starters, how much I was working. I had said that overworking hustle and grind. That's behind me. That's my old life. I've done the 120 hour work weeks, 4 hours of sleep, 7 days a week, even holidays. I've done that. That's behind me. And yet it was still how I lived. I embodied that. Part of my identity was based in hard work. And so because I did not do the identity work, I had to carry that with me. It was still a value that I held. Without modifying that, there was no hope that Queen of Ops could be an aligned business. Today, if I opened that same business, I could make it aligned. But the identity work that I needed to do to be a CEO of a 7-figure business that was running it on 25 hours a week or, 30 hours a week, or honestly, even 40 hours a week.
Anything but 120.
Anything but 120. And I wasn't, to be fair, I wasn't doing 120. Even at the height of it, I was probably between 70 and 80 most of the time.
The
too many.
Taker. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the identity work that you do? Because we talk a lot about identity on this podcast, and it's deep work that I do with my clients, because that belief about yourself, self-image, identity drives everything. I personally talk about how identity drives decision, and then your decisions drive your actions and your outcomes and how you feel and all of that. So tell me a little bit about how you went about that for yourself.
I needed to understand first who was I acting like. If it's not the me I want to be, who am I acting like? And I think for most of us, we've had things modeled, and whether it's conscious or subconscious, that's what feels normal, and it feels okay. And it also feels like the way that we're going to be loved and accepted. And my dad is an incredibly amazing, hardworking man. And every morning I would go downstairs to be at 5 a.m. water polo practice, and he'd already be in his office working. And I'd come home after more water polo practice and this and that and all the activities, and he would be in his office working after having worked all day. And I really admire that about him, but I incorporated that into my identity. And if I was working less than him, then I could not possibly be acceptable in my mind. And I think that that started to shift when I was at a wedding for a family member, and I heard him praise me for my ability to, what I call, jump off cliffs, to just have faith that it's all going to work out. And I had a moment where I thought, that's what makes me the black sheep of the family. That's what makes me unloved. That's what makes me unacceptable in this family. Every other thing I have tried to fall in line with, but that's at the core, like that jump off cliffs tendency that I have, it makes me unacceptable. And I thought, if I can be acceptable, and not just acceptable, but loved as someone who does that, then maybe there are other things that I am taking for granted that I have to be. And so I started doing that work, and it was like a piece of yarn that just started pulling on, and this whole tapestry of who I was began to unravel. And I had to decide, am I going to live like I'm acceptable, and more importantly, like I'm acceptable to me, or am I going to base this off of stuff that I've never even asked anybody how they feel about this?
Totally. It sounds like you really, not only was there a huge revelation from the person that you clearly were looking for love and acceptance from, right? Yeah. For approval and all of that. This big revelation around that opened everything up for you. So it was this little fissure that you were able to pry everything open from, but that you also really dug into what your values were and what your true desires were in life versus an automatic, conditioned, programmed response to that. So that's fantastic. I want to go back to one thing, because it's something that I think will resonate with a lot of women. So hard work. You were on business 5 and 6. There were 4 businesses before that. Hard work as defined by long hours, okay? Because there can be hard work that was short hours. Meaning you can put in the appropriate level of effort, focus, intensity without the hours. And you can do long hours without the grind with a delighted out attitude. So there's all sorts of ways to define this. Defining it as simply 80-hour days, the grind, right?
Yeah.
And just using that will and work ethic, not it necessarily being aligned with the perfect genius work that you want to be doing in this world and what lights you up. Okay, with that as frame, how much do you think that kind of hard work drives success as defined by seven figures, multiple seven figures, like getting a viable business off the ground? I mean, some people have a goal of six figures or multiple six figures, whatever your version of success is. Like, how much do you think that contributes?
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably an 8. It's pretty high up there. And I think that a lot of us have had, especially if you have boomer parents model that so well. And so we've all seen the hours being put in. I don't think we have really good models for, I can sit and be and just think. And in that thinking time, what's going to happen is magic. And I know that the greatest leaps that I've had, and even pre-identity shift, I knew this, but the greatest leaps that I have had have been, they stem from the thinking time that I give myself, or it's not even like thinking time, like I'm just sitting there and I don't know, I always picture this like wood-paneled library, me smoking a cigar, a whiskey in hand, which by the way, I do love like that library. I want that library, but like it can be baking time, especially for us as women, is like when we're creating and not focused on the thing, so much of the time, that's when flow happens. That's when the downloads come. I'm sure you've experienced that. I'm sure your women have experienced it. Yeah.
I often talk about that masculine and feminine essence. That's a big part of how I approach the full, like leading from the fullness of who you are as a woman. And though men, our male colleagues that I love, adore, they have generally as a assumption and generality have more of the masculine essence in them and less of the feminine, but we all have both and to differing degrees. And you and I wouldn't have been able to build our multiple seven-figure businesses if we didn't have a strong masculine essence. And we need that flow, and I think everyone does, but we need that flow. So what are your practices for that? Because I think it's really important to, as you've mentioned, like create a model for other women who are perhaps stuck in the grind, stuck thinking that they have to work the 12-hour days. I'll let you speak, but I have more on the 12-hour day that I want to come back to. But like, what's the model that you want to present on really claiming the feminine ability to kind of receive and, resource?
I have a lot of different things, and I'm in a season right now where I don't hold fast to any kind of routine. I call everything that I do rhythm. And if I skip a beat, it's okay.
I freaking love that, Megan, just so you know, because let me just riff on that for a second, because the masculine is very focused, very disciplined. This is how we resource ourselves. Every day at 4, we work out, right? And it's very like by the calendar and all of that. And I think we need a certain amount of discipline. But as a woman, I also need to shift into what's required in the moment for me right now. And I think there's like a trust that you can build with yourself about the right level of discipline. And then it becomes this rhythm that you're talking about. So anyways, I freaking love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, a couple of my absolute must-do everyday activities are I make tea for myself, and I'm not a coffee person at all, but I drink loose leaf tea. I've got a whole bunch of loose leaf teas, and just the practice of every morning I come downstairs, I put my kettle on, I choose which tea, I weigh it out. There's like something about that beautiful rhythm it starts everything well. I walk every day, whether I feel like it or not, whether it's 100 degrees outside or 0 degrees outside. And it was actually like 0 degrees in Nashville recently. That was terrible, but I walked anyway, because there is something that happens in me when I walk that is not even possible if I'm just sitting or inside or outside. It's just like there's the process of walking that loosens things up in my brain.
Yeah. They talk about how the bilateral movement of walking actually helps the synapses. I don't know the proper neuroscience words, but the synapses go back and forth across your left and right brain, and there's more connections made there. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So walking is a big one for me. Reading fiction or reading non-business fiction. I think that's a big one that, again, the masculine is really about kind of this like driver, don't do anything without purpose. But in my feminine, I realized that everything has purpose. And so much of my genius has come from aggregating. I read 100 books a year, and like some of those books are on physics, and some of those books are on epigenetics, and some of those books are like cozy mysteries. And somehow they all edify me. And if something isn't edifying, I stop reading it. I just immediately, I'm done. I don't need it anymore. But I'll just literally like grab a stack. I have 4 stacks of books surrounding me right now. There's spiritual book, revenue book. There's so many different books around me, and I pull from all of them. My feminine is about like connections and like you said, like receiving different things. And like, just if I make space for that to happen, it happened magically.
I love that. I want to underscore everything has purpose. That was like, when you said that, I was like all the cells in my body, which are the radar that like tune into things went. So I love that. And my bedside table sounds like your desk, right?
Yeah.
Because, but I don't read 100 books a year. I'm probably at 50% of that. So how much time do you spend reading? Are you a speed reader? Let's get into the details.
Yeah. I'm actually an incredibly slow reader. I'm dyslexic. So I read a lot of things in either physical book form or Kindle and audio, either at the same time, or I finish a book on audio and I immediately read it in physical form, because I am verbal visual and my memory is very tied to the visual. So if I can picture where it is on the page, I can remember it, lock it away in what I call my library forever.
I have that too, but I never articulated it. I remember in college looking at remembering the bottom left of the page,
yes.
Something, right? Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can even think back to, I highlighted that in orange or that in purple. So I can go look for purple highlighter or whatever.
Yeah. I love that. So how much time do you dedicate to your practice?
I don't really watch TV or watch movies. So for me, reading is probably my main source of entertainment. I don't know. I mean, maybe 3-4 hours a day. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's your way of coming back to yourself, decompressing, shifting gears, changing the type of energy that you're in.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. Let's go back to your journey. Okay, let's go back. So you were doing this Queen of Ops business, and it was aligned in many ways, not aligned in other ways. There were lots of constraints. Was that a jump off the cliff moment for you, where you decided, actually, I know so completely I'm too constrained here. We're ending this now without much ado, or was there a lot of process and thinking about it?
It was painful and drawn out, and ultimately it was so misaligned that I wasn't even able to bring in money. It's like it just got to the point where I dreaded making sales. And obviously that will kill a business. But I had the most aligned part of the business was I had the most beautiful, wonderful team in the world. And I miss them all the time. I really miss that team. And so I kept running it for them. I kept trying to make it work for them and trying to make it aligned for me and trying to make little shifts. Ultimately, like I had to shut it down. I had to, and I had to do it for them and for me. And in retrospect, I wish that I had pivoted sooner, because if I had tried 6 months before I started, I think we would have made it. There are so many things that the operations person in me knows. We could have done this and we could have done that. I've broken it all down. I had 2 months of absolutely nothing where I just broke everything down, every mistake, a full postmortem, if you will, on the business. I wish that once I had really known that it was not savable, that I had not drawn it out from that point, that I had served my team better and given them more opportunity to not drown with it or not go down with the ship. But they were so loyal and faithful that it felt like the worst thing to just cut it off. So yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah. I can feel that emotion is still really poignant for you. Would you say that this was one of the hardest decisions you made in your life?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's the actual hardest decision I've ever made in my life.
Yeah. And this goes right back to how you started our conversation today around what drives you are the people,
Yes.
like you approach operations from the people perspective, and you're so good at it, and it's what you value. So how has that affected your ability to build a new team?
It set me back quite a lot. I had a lot of self-doubt, and I'm not familiar with self-doubt, actually. That is not a feeling I have experienced often. It came because I was struggling with my identity and having to finally make those identity shifts that I'd been kind of like, no, those aren't real. I don't have to pay attention to them. But I did experience self-doubt really for the first time in my life. I mean, it was hell. And it was so hard. And I tell my friends this, I wouldn't wish what I went on, what I went through on anyone except for the people I loved, because what it led to, that journey, the discovery of my true self. And I wouldn't say I'm done discovering, but I am on the right path, maybe for the first time. That has been worth everything.
Absolutely. We don't always know how life is for us. And God, spirit, source, the universe, infinite intelligence is, in my perspective, my worldview, is always for us.
Yes.
And this is a choice. This is an active choice we make every single day. Like, you either believe the world is for you or against you. That was something, I don't have the quote exactly in my head, but paraphrasing, that Albert Einstein said that the biggest choice that you can make is to decide whether you believe the world is for you or against you. And that perspective choice changes everything.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the self-doubt, though. What did this cause you to doubt about yourself?
I think that more than anything, it was, am I really an operations person if I crashed this business that was successful? I mean, like a year in, hitting 7 figures, and it's like, wow, oh my gosh. Like, and it was, I had a plan that was written down literally month by month that got us to that point. And so like, I knew that I knew what I knew. But on the other side of it, it was like, did I really know that? Was that all just a fluke? Was this just my connections? Was this just the great team that I had? Not to minimize them, not just them, but did I really have anything to do with this? And could I replicate it? Can I even get up again? I've had a lot of downs, and I always prided myself on being the phoenix. I can always rise from the ashes. But this one felt like it was just harder to get up. And I thought, are my bones just too old to get up from this one?
Do you think it became a bit of a self-worth issue?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I find that self-worth and self-doubt seem to go hand in hand. So what do you think allowed you to really move through that? And it sounds like you're still moving through, right? We do that every day, every time we get up and take a breath for on a new day. But in this particular part of your journey, how did you move through that?
It was finally deciding to not live in shame. And I have lived in shame my whole life. Not to go like way too deep, but I had sexual trauma as a very young kid and then repeated throughout my life. And so that, of course, builds shame just in your body. And then I had all of these stories that I was telling myself, even, I didn't become an Olympic water polo player. So like, I'm wrong. I'm flawed. I didn't take over my dad's business. So I'm wrong and flawed. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I am not this thing. I am the black sheep. And so that's why I say so much of it comes down to identity is I had to shift my identity to one of the pastors at my church says to living like you're loved, live loved. And if you can live loved and believe that you are loved, then everything changes for you. And it's just like what you're talking about is like, is the world for you or is it against you? And I've been relentlessly optimistic about all the hard knocks that I've had, but I had never embraced that idea that I was loved, that I just for being who I am, just me with all of my flaws, that I'm loved, period. Not lovable, not could be loved, not potentially down the road could be lovable, but like I did not love myself because I was carrying all of this shame. And so I couldn't believe that anyone or anything else could love me or really truly work out for me. And so when I released all of that, it opened the world up to me.
I can feel that. That is, it's really powerful. What I can really feel there, Megan, is how you're bringing that to your business, like to how you're being very conscious and intentional about who you're being in your business. So I love that. I want to ask you another question, a little bit of a tangent, but connected to this idea of shame. Shame says, I've done something wrong. It's very connected to that lack of self-worth, that not enoughness. And there have been a lot of studies on what successful people, like uber successful people, have in common. And I am fascinated by what they have found, which are three things. One is they have an inflated self-ego that says they're made for more. They are here to do something extraordinary. Okay. So I'm thinking about, I was supposed to be a Olympic world class water polo player, right? Like there's like, I was made for more.
Yeah.
And then seemingly contradictory, but not so. Number two is deep insecurity, deep sense of not enoughness, right? And that shame and unworth and self-doubt and all of that. And then the third, incredible self-discipline and focus. Agree, disagree? How do you rank yourself in those three categories?
Absolutely agree. On point one, I always knew I was meant for something more. And, people will think I'm crazy, but like God speaks to me. And I know I have a calling on my life. I know that I'm meant to do big things. The second thing, obviously,
the unreasonable woman, right?
Yeah,
you got it on
honestly,
tattooed on your arm.
Yeah. The second thing, obviously, yes, we've covered that. And the third thing, this is what's so interesting, is that self-discipline. How do we find that self-discipline in the feminine?
Yes. because I constantly, like, I'm seduced, I'm attracted. I see these male entrepreneurs, the way they talk about the discipline, do the same thing deep every day. And it's so masculine, right? It's so like, I'm going deep. It's like sex, right? It's like, that's what they do. And I'm like, I get that. I get that level of focus. And how do we do that version with the feminine and as women and with a different energy cadence and a different rhythm and quite frankly, the female brain is different than the male brain. It just works differently and it's biologically different.
I think that comes down to the rhythms because like you said, like it is so attractive and I find it so attractive, but I find it attractive because it's not how my brain works.
I find it attractive because I think I find men sexy. So just having that.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's very sexy. Okay, good. We're in agreement there. And it does work. Like as someone who wants results, who wants outcomes, there's a way in which that works. But I just think we have to be very intentional, conscientious, aware of, does that work for us? And what's the degree? And when do we need it? And when do we not? And what does that integration actually look like for us? It's a Rubik's Cube sometimes, and then other days you just nail it. And one thing I will share with you, I don't know if you resonate with this, but one thing that I do, and my biggest, most successful feel-good days are when I wake up early, because I am a morning person, and I don't talk to anyone, have anything booked on my calendar until like 11 or 12 in the afternoon. And I can go deep into my work. And when I'm in that, it's a matrix. It's not, I'm going to do one thing for those 6 hours, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing this and then my brain takes me over here and I do this and it's this matrix and network. But I'm working with my female brain. Some people call it the entrepreneurial ADHD brain, but I call it my female brain. And I have the spaciousness, right? I need that spaciousness to flow from one thing to another. And I have the container of the structure of uninterrupted time. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, I'm the same way. I'm up between 5 and 5:30 a.m. kind of person. That's my body just naturally doing that. I don't ever set an alarm. But even that, the decision to stop setting an alarm was about honoring my feminine energy, even knowing that I will still wake up at that time. And so it's like, there have been a couple times over the last 6 months where I've been able to sleep in to 7 a.m.
Amazing.
I know. I'm like, and just honoring that sometimes that's what my body needs. My chiropractor told me women need 9 hours of sleep. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to give myself the opportunity to do that. And I stopped setting my alarm and it was amazing. And I don't get 9 hours of sleep, but
I used to, you know what's interesting about that? I don't set my alarm either. And I used to need 9 hours of sleep and I need less and less sleep. And my working hypothesis on this is that when you work through the guilt and the shame, when you work through that not enoughness, when you work through the identity issues and the self-worth issues, that you just have less friction on the line. There's less that you need to actually process at night. You know, we synthesize at night and integrate at night. And there's just less that you need. And I don't set my alarm. And sometimes I go to bed super early because that's when I want to go to bed. Yeah. And I wake up 4 or 5 hours later. And sometimes I need more for sure. And I get 6 to 8. But like, there's something that has changed because I used to be a 9 hour a gal, a 9 hour a night gal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one more thing that I want to circle back to, you are not crazy. God speaks to me too. I think this is something, but for me, I don't know if you found this later in life, but that is a last 5 years, maybe 10 years kind of thing, that like in my pursuit of my own spirituality and truth and what it means to be a human being on this earth and what we're meant to do, pursuing that whole line of thought has led me to very deep and profound conversations with what I call spirit or God. And it has been transformational for me, and something that I had to really learn to trust. And to me, that's very much about the stepping into the receiving and that aspect of us as a woman. Would you share what your journey on that is?
Yeah, I experienced it from a very young age. But in times when I'm in masculine and I'm in doer, put my head down, get it done, make it happen mode, the voice is often too quiet for me to hear. Yeah. And one of the most important moments in my life was I had one of my coaches say actually about me to someone else. And fortunately, that person passed it on to me. Well, the thing about Megan is that she thinks that her intellect is her greatest asset, but her actual greatest strength is her intuition. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I literally told him to his face. I was like, so-and-so told me that you said this thing, and I just want you to know that you're wrong. And within 4 days, my intuition had started popping up enough and me noticing, I quiet that. And this was while I was running Queen of Ops. And so I decided, what if I start listening to the intuition? What if I give space to the voice of God again? And then was able to go, look, my business started going wrong back in June of 2021 when I decided to step in and grow the thing instead of receiving, instead of just being like, yeah, cool, this is going to be what it's going to be. And like, if it becomes something bigger, then it becomes something bigger. And it was magic up until then. And then I took over and I began to crash it. And so that is what I have noticed, is that in the masculine, for me, I ruin things. I crash things. Not that I can't have masculine energy, because like you pointed out earlier, it is a balance. We need both. But when I am running everything from my masculine, then I'm completely missing all of the gifts that make me who I am, make me special and unique and able to build a 7-figure business almost by accident in a single year.
Powerfully said, Megan. So before I ask you my final questions and share some of the reflections of what landed for me, where can people find you and how can they learn about what you're doing and how to tap into your brilliance?
We have thebusycure.com, my partner and I, but to connect with me personally, I share a lot of my personal life on Instagram. So my handle is Megan Kuethen, just my name, and I'm the only one in the world. So as long as you remember how to spell my last name, which can be difficult, then you can find me pretty much anywhere on any platform.
My final question for you, and I think this is a good one based on the recent transformation and tapping in that you've had. What do you love most about yourself?
That's a hard question for a different reason than it would have been a year ago. Because a year ago, I would have had a hard time finding a thing. And now I love so much about myself. I think that I love most that I see the person in every situation. I never forget that I'm an imperfect human and I need grace, and that every person in every situation needs grace. And that empathy that gives me allows me to handle even something like operations that can be as process oriented with a different view than anyone else. That is my unique thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What would you think the salient trait is right now in your life that makes you an unstoppable woman?
This sounds weird, but I practice failure. I learned about heuristics back in 2012. I was going through a divorce and I learned about heuristics and I thought everything sucks and I don't believe anything good. And so I'm going to change my brain and I'm just going to start practicing failure and hard things. And that has been a daily practice for me. And it has made me believe that the failure is never the end.
When you say practicing failure, do you mean practicing the risk of failure? Or do you mean I know that this is going to fail, and I'm going to put myself in failure in order to experience failure?
Yeah, that second one. So like, as an example, a yoga move that I know I can't do. Like, I'm not advanced enough to do that thing. And I'm in a room full of people who are going to see me fall over, and I'm going to do it anyway.
I love that. I freaking love that. Okay, I'm going to put that's going into my toolkit. I'm taking that on. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you. That's so good. So I just want to reflect back, Megan, that this has been such a juicy conversation, primarily because you represent this beautiful integration of the masculine and the feminine. And you've been very transparent about where it's worked for you and where it hasn't worked for you, and what your personal challenges have been with it, and have been open to modeling that there's a different way forward, and what that might look like and what success might look like in that arena. And I also want to just share that I love how you integrate the knowledge that you are tapping into and accessing, whether it's the conversations with God or the 3 to 4 hours of reading that you do on a breadth of topics, that there is that synthesis that you're bringing. And it's not just an intellectual synthesis, but there's an application in your life, like this last reference that you made about learning about heuristics, and then like, I am going to practice failure every day and what that actually looks like and means. So thank you for bringing the wholeness of who you are to this conversation. It has been a great one.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure to be here.